Hello, friends. Ashley Michelle here with another episode of Astrology After Dark with, of course, Dani, that witch next door. How are you, darling?
So good. So ready for this episode.
This is going to be a really good episode. So, friends, we had a pretty long and intense conversation around this episode before we hopped in. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. So, you buckle up. This is for our pop culture fanatics. This is for our astrology fanatics. This is for our conspiracy theorists. You
Oh,
all
yeah.
got you, yeah, like you guys already know in the Goddess Complex that we cover all sorts of taboo topics. And this is just another one of those episodes. Disclaimer before we get into it, we are going to be talking about sex trafficking, child exploitation. There's going to be some uncomfortable topics brought into play. So, trigger warning if you're sensitive to these topics in these areas, maybe skip this one or skip through. We're going to be talking about what's happening with Sean P. Diddy Combs. We're going to get into the Nickelodeon documentary a bit. And those are the two main things we'll be talking about when we're talking about child exploitation and all of that. So,
We're
wanted to say that
covering a
right here.
lot more ground than we usually do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just know that this is a lot more than looking at a person's chart today.
It is. It is. And we're coming into this episode today. I think the overall tone of today's episode is Pluto and Aquarius. You
Yeah.
know, we've talked about it. You all have talked about it. You've heard other astrologers talk about it. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you have an idea of what Pluto and Aquarius is. And you might remember some months back, I dropped a Pluto and Aquarius episode, but at the time, I wasn't feeling like it was enough. And I still wasn't feeling like it was enough. And so I think today we're going to go into it. Um, I've been dropping little hints here and there on my stories. I'm like, oh, this just dropped Super Pluto and Aquarius. But I'm sure some of you are like, okay, cool. But like, what does that mean? And so I think I kind of want to start this episode with just general expansion on what Pluto and Aquarius means in astrology and what it means for us as a collective. And I'm feeling called for you to kick us off with that, Dani, if you'd be so kind.
Absolutely. So always when we want to first understand what something like that is, we break it down and
Mhm,
we look at Pluto and we look at Aquarius first and
mhm.
foremost. Because regardless of the sign that Pluto's in, let's talk about what Pluto's job is in the first place. Because the zodiac sign that the planet is in is like the character that they portray, the costume, the uniform that they put on, the way they
Yeah,
express themselves, and the way they express their purpose and their job. But their job stays the same. It's just
right.
different in how they express it. That's what the zodiac sign flavor does. No matter the sign that Pluto is in, it's it is attributed and connected to in mythology Pluto or Hades, god of the underworld. And in many ways, the way that this translates in astrology is it's Pluto's job to surface what has been kept, buried, shoved under the surface.
Hmm.
For whatever reason, but we'll notice in Pluto that very often it has to do around things when it comes to power dynamics,
Yeah,
things that are shoved beneath the surface in order to gain or maintain some sort of power or control over usually more than one person, usually very large groups of people. Uh, Pluto is our slowest moving planet in the main planets that we track in astrology. It takes 248 years to make one revolution around the sun. It also has
woo,
a very fascinating elliptical pattern in the first place, an orbital pattern. It stays in signs for different amounts of time. It's
Right.
not this neat and tidy rotation and orbit. So in its
So, for
home
example, the
sign,
sun is
mhm,
in one sign for give or take 30 days all the time.
yep, neat and
Pluto
tidy.
doesn't do
Yep,
that. Right.
exactly. The moon is relatively predictable in its
Yeah.
orbit. It's not necessarily like the prettiest numbers, but we know what those numbers are. And that's why
Hmm.
astrologers will say, it's about 2.5 days or so
Right.
that the moon stays in a sign. Pluto, for example, just to give you an idea of the range, because it is huge, Pluto stays in its home sign of Scorpio for one of its shortest amounts of time, which is 12 or 13 years, I believe. But it stays in its sign of what's considered its detriment or opposite in Taurus for upwards of 30 years at a time.
Wow. Right.
So if you can imagine for a second, knowing how many people are in our world, on our earth,
Mhm.
think about how many humans are born during a 13 to 30-year period. It's a fuck ton. This means that many people, whole entire generations of people, are born with the same Pluto sign. This is
And
why we
and we
say,
are the Pluto and Scorpio generation.
yes,
There's
yes,
lots of
exactly.
us that have Pluto and
Millennial, yeah.
Scorpio. Yeah.
Yes. And this is why you'll hear when Ashley or I or other astrologers talk about Pluto in this really grand scheme,
Yeah.
big global way. That's because it's that kind of a player. It has that big of a job and that big of a role and a duty.
Right.
Um, because of this ruler of the underworld resurfacing what's been repressed, this means that Pluto's very associated with death and like tower energy, what must come down in order for it to be rebuilt.
Hmm.
Um, when you add Aquarius into this, you
Right.
guys,
Things get
there's a
weird,
lot of,
pun
yeah,
intended.
yeah, this is
Hmm.
intense. This is more intense than Capricorn. And I'll tell you
Yeah.
why. It's because Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, but Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Uranus.
Yes.
And there is already this revolutionary energy
Mm.
associated with Aquarius. Capricorn is going to be more willing to go by the status quo, keep things traditional, even
There's
if
a
they're not
stability with
perfect.
Capricorn.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And in Aquarius, we're going to see a lot more of like, no, I'm not okay with that. And I'm not going to shut
Hmm.
up about it.
Right.
And we're going to see this community and human connection of if we band together. Like I totally think of like, stories like A Bug's Life, where the whole entire point
I love that.
is there's way more of us than you. I have like chills running all throughout
Yeah.
right now. It's total
Yes.
Aquarius energy.
Yes.
So Aquarius, when Pluto's in Aquarius, to answer you, to sum all of that up, I would say Aquarius almost eggs Pluto on. It almost
Yeah.
gives it this extra boost of confidence and sense of purpose in its job and duties to bring what must come up and be this undeniable truth that we cannot we cannot deny.
Right. And, Aquarius is the revolutionary, right? Aquarius is the person who sticks up for the little guy. And I don't think it's by coincidence that we're dealing with our smallest planetary body. I know, if you guys are into astronomy, there's debate on whether or not Pluto is a planet. Either way, we still work with Pluto in astrology. Um, in our solar system. And so we're dealing with this Aquarian energy of we are going to revolt. There's an uprising. We're standing up. We're not dealing with what we've dealt with for so fucking long. And a big point that I think we need to bring into is Pluto deals with our government. We often see upheavals around government and policy
Mhm.
when Pluto's doing something crazy. I'm not
Exactly.
going to sit here and give you guys the history. If you are curious about this, look it up. Like we are here to be sources of information for you, but you closed mouth don't get fed. So if this is something that really deeply intrigues you, I 10 out of 10 suggest that you pull out those ephemerises and you look up some historical dates and you see it for yourself, because it actually
Mm.
really is quite fascinating to
Yep.
correlate big world events and what Pluto was doing in the sky. They're fascinating. But anyways, um, so yeah, Pluto and Aquarius is very much like that. So I think we are going to see a lot of things happening with our government, and we already have, right? We already have been seeing things happening, stuff around abortion, what's happening in the trans community and the gay community. And actually just saw something, one of these goddamn states was again saying, they're illegal, making it illegal for minors to have operations, to transgender operations, us not being able to have abortions whenever the fuck we want. These are huge things, huge things that we are just kind of glossing over.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why Pluto and Aquarius is so important, because again, Aquarius is the revolutionary, and Pluto puts something in your face until you choose to see it. So we're going to continue to see these big, huge, wait a second, something's wrong with that thing until something is done. Epstein, I think, should be mentioned right now. I'm feeling a call to bring Epstein up
That's
before
exactly what
we,
I was just thinking about when you were saying
yeah.
that. Yes, especially
Mhm.
because that happened during the
Just before.
Jupiter Pluto conjunction.
Exactly. And so, and what you're saying right now, Dani, I think is so important. Like, so many people have so much to say around astrology, but haven't done anywhere near the amount of research that needs to be done before they try to negate it or even try to uphold it. To be an astrologer is to be
Mhm.
a forever student and also a historian in your own right. I love how that just rolled off
There's
your tongue.
You have to do that legwork. I get asked a lot. I'm really glad you're talking about this because I get asked
Yeah.
a lot for resources on historical astrology. The first place I will send you is Chris Brennan and to his podcast.
Yes.
He's a great deep
Love Chris
diver.
Brennan.
He's gonna go deep into a lot of history. But here's the deal. He's doing any historical astrologer you listen to is doing the legwork, the work that you could do as well
Easily.
because they're just looking up
That's
historical
it.
events and dates based on astrological dates and events.
One
Exactly.
hundred, they're literally just doing one or the other. It's like looking up when we signed um our contract, our independence contract,
The
when
Declaration of
America,
Independence. Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you,
yeah.
babe, thank you. When we signed our Declaration of Independence, you want to look up that date, all you're doing is going into an astrological resource directory and typing that date in to see what was happening in the sky. Is there any sort of correlation? And if I'm not mistaken, Pluto was doing something wild during that day too, or just entered a sign. I can't quite remember. But there's always something going on, and that's the point. So going back to Epstein, fucking Epstein. So, I'm going to be fully transparent with you guys, right? So, you all know your girl likes to cry. And the Epstein documentary came out on Netflix. I could not even fucking finish it. I could not finish it. It was too much for me. But my point in saying that is all this talk happened around Epstein and Epstein's list and all this stuff. I mean, there were names like Beyonce Knowles herself was mentioned on Epstein's list.
Hmm.
We're not talking about that though. She getting ready for her country album.
Hmm.
And now we're sitting here again because Pluto likes to do that over and over and over again. Pluto's going to
Oh,
show
what did
you the
we do with
same
the
shit.
Epstein documentary? What happened? We made a big uproar and right under the rug,
That's it.
immediately under the rug.
That's it.
There's a
But
reason
the
it's
right,
pop popping up, back up.
right. But the child sex trafficking issue is still not being addressed. And so here we are in
Nope.
2024 looking at Nickelodeon, the shit we grew up on. I remember all those feet like it was yesterday. And I remember thinking as a child, what's going on with the feet? I remember that. 90s kids grew up on TV, right? Get home from school, sit down right in front of the TV, people
Oh
getting
yeah.
slimed, like straight up 90s kid. So that's coming up with the Nickelodeon documentary. And then, they had to find themselves a scapegoat. So now you've got Sean P. Diddy Combs, which, mind you, just for clarification, the things that Sean P. Diddy Combs did is absolutely horrendous. I 100% believe he has done everything he's being accused of, and he needs to rot in jail. And his Scorpio ass got aggressively power hungry. But also, people will
He
do
didn't invent this.
that part.
No, this goes,
He
if you, he didn't
he felt like that
invent
was
this.
okay. He felt like
That's
that
all I'm
somebody taught
saying.
behavior, right?
Exactly. Doesn't mean it's okay to participate and you're 100%
Mm-mm.
accountable for all of this. And
Mm-hmm.
they want us to believe he's the originator and that this is going to quote
Yes.
unquote die or go away with him going away or dying.
Right. Right.
Wouldn't that
And
be
so
a neat and tidy solution so that we can
everybody
go right
shut
back
up
to sweeping
now.
this under the rug? Because this is a
Mm-hmm.
very people want to immediately stop talking about this because that's the
Mm-hmm.
disgusting, horrible feeling you feel inside of your body when you watch these
Balenciaga.
documentaries. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
People don't want to like hold that Balenciaga shit that got swept under the rug. I
That
mean, you guys know I like the Kardashians, but I was incredibly disappointed in Kim. You know, when she signed with Balenciaga again after saying she wasn't going to work with them. And like literally people are still out there repping Balenciaga after that wild ass campaign. Again, who thought that putting children in bondage was some sort of creative expression?
or joke or
Like
any like
what?
and there is no just that's how that felt like them spitting in our face.
Mhm.
Look what we can get away with.
Agreed.
Totally. Totally.
Agreed, because as the masses, this is where I think the term sleepwalker does come from. Because as the masses, the majority of folks are only worried about what's in your banking account and what brands you're wearing and what your hierarchy is in the economy and how much your house is worth. To be quite honest with you, it's absolutely disgusting, but that is really the shit we're dealing with. And that is why we are so passionate about our work as spiritual individuals, because living a life in that way will lead to campaigns like Balenciaga.
Yep.
So to go back to Epstein, Epstein got swept under the rug and it was all quiet and stuff. And then Sierra, to give you all background on Sean P. Diddy Combs, if you don't know what's going on, Sierra, P. Diddy's ex-girlfriend, and I put that in quotes if you're not watching the YouTube because she was so young, 19 when she met him. Long story short, she would force her to have sex with male prostitutes, and because he would get off on watching it, he would beat her ass, all sorts of stuff. And long story short, she sued him last year for $30 million, and it was kept quiet. And
And it was
he,
settled outside of court like
well,
the day after. It was something wild.
the
How
reason why was
quickly that
because
got rectified.
well, she kept threatening him to go public, but he was ignoring her. Scorpio power. He was, and right now we're talking about the lower octave of scorpionic energy so that you guys can understand. He was like, the statute of limitations is about to be up. She's gonna go away. No big deal. She won't go public. He was trying to call her bluff. And
Mm.
then she did go public. And when she did go public was when he settled, which set flags for everybody else and their mom. We may not even have time to get to poor Usher and Justin Bieber in this episode. But you know,
I
that
know.
man was the epitome of abusing his power, just like Jeffrey Epstein. But again, guys, we're talking about big names. We're talking about Prince Harry. We're talking about presidents. Oprah was involved. And I know Oprah is her own thing. I know we all got feelings on Oprah, honey. But really, I was called to do this episode with you today, Dani, because I think we need to stop being sleepwalkers and we need to start really using our fucking brains and stop assuming that what people show us is what's actually happening and doing some of our own research at what's going on in the world.
And maybe not instantly silencing people that are trying to tell the
Yes,
motherfucking truth. Can we
right.
maybe learn a
Yes.
little bit of lesson around that? Because all
Mhm.
I've seen is this, oh, Amanda Bynes. wasn't just randomly losing her mind.
Right.
Shocking. She was always telling us the truth. And then there's those of us that are like,
Mhm.
yeah, dude, that's what we've been trying to fucking say. This
Poor
doesn't, you
Justin
think it
Bieber
starts at Nickelodeon? Corey
and that hard
Feldman
time that he
tried to
had.
put all of this out there and no one will fucking listen to him.
No one. And honestly, because everything goes back to aliens, it goes back to aliens. How many people that have worked for our United States government have come out talking about the shit that we don't know? And the average everyday person, the sleepwalker, if you feel triggered by that term, that's a you problem, will sit there and shut people down and shut people up and say, oh, it's fake. Oh, it's not real. What if what we watch on the news is fake? What if the bridge shit was fucking fake? Like, we don't, it's interesting that they dropped three insane fucking stories. And then the fourth one is this bridge catastrophe. I'm just saying, speaking of which, I want to get back to P. Diddy, but I would love to talk about the royal family because, like, can we
Yeah.
get any more Pluto and Aquarius than that? So they tried to cover up what was going on with Kate, right? And of course, there's still speculation on what's going on with Kate. But I think the biggest Pluto and Aquarius thing was the royal family trying to put out that photo, that Photoshop photo of her and her family, thinking we'll just pull the wool over their eyes. They'll never know. We'll post this photo. We'll put some shit together. Nobody will know. And within hours, people were dissecting it. I read somewhere that there were over 16 different Photoshopped edits to that photo. And it was after the royal family got found out that they were Photoshopping the photos. That was when Kate was like, okay, let me tell you guys what's actually going on. I mean, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes,
This,
Danny.
of
Yes.
all of the
Yes.
stories, of all of the stories that came out, I'm the most removed from the royal family one. Well,
Okay.
I saw the most surface level information on it. It
Oh,
came across my
okay.
feed a few times. I'm looking up the photo right now because
So
I'm
you
so
look up
confused.
the photo, and while you look it up, I'll give the people a rundown who
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so long story short, nobody's seen Kate Middleton in a long time. You know, she was said to go have had abdominal surgery. There's only one photo of her husband going to see her at the hospital. Kate hasn't done any public appearances. Paparazzi has been standing outside of the hospital waiting for her to come out. Nobody's seen her. Social media starts going crazy. Where's Kate Middleton? Is she dead? Is she alive? Is she dying? Why haven't we seen her? Literally for 8, 9, 10 weeks. Where is Kate Middleton? The royal family posts this photo as Kate, of Kate and her family taking like holiday photos or something like that. And with Aquarius, age of technology, with how good tech has gotten right now and how good and savvy so many creators have gotten right now, it was very, very, very easily dissected that the photo that the royal family dropped as Kate was not Kate and was a Photoshop photo of them putting pieces together. So people were commenting on the sweater she was wearing and how like the sweater color was, she was wearing the same sweater but a different color, a different photo. And you guys can do a deep dive if you want on TikTok. It's fascinating. But long story short, the photo was doctored over 16 different times. It wasn't a real photo. It wasn't taken on the real date. Kate was not sitting there happy as a lamb with her children. She was still MIA. And it was a couple weeks after it had come out that that photo was no longer real that they were like, okay, guys, you got us. You got us. And that's when Kate came out herself and said, I have cancer. That's where I've been. And Kate, we wish you a speedy recovery. We love you over here in America. But I think that this is such a classic example of Pluto and Aquarius because, again, here are the powers that be treating us like we're circus animals. Like
Well,
they don't
yeah,
know any
the
better.
apology that she issued, and keep in mind, you got to put quotes around that. You don't understand
Right,
how little most of these people aren't actually doing any of their own writing, whether it's captions or
right,
apologies or what.
right,
Most people are
right.
not even dictating it, let alone writing
Right.
it.
Mhm.
Um, the apology she issued is very odd
Mm-hmm.
given what happened
Read it. Go
because
for it.
she
Is it in front
wrote,
of
yeah,
you?
I've got it right here. She issued a personal apology for editing the Mother's Day photograph. This is so weird. Like many amateur photographers, I do occasionally experiment with editing.
Yeah.
That is the weirdest thing to fucking say about this at
Girl,
all.
you
I want to
have
express my
you have
apology
colon
for
cancer.
any confusion, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But this is not a quote unquote experimenting for
She
funsies
didn't
like an
do
amateur
that. No,
someone
no.
told her a publicist, somebody that employed by the royal family or whatever,
They wrote
said
that.
those are the
And then
best words to use. Yes. You
and
guys
then it
need to
was
watch
after
all of the
that.
House of Usher because when it comes to the depiction of a publicist, that is an excellent, excellent peek inside how motherfucking curated titles are and stories are when it comes to any kind of celebrity or just any
Curated.
popular figure.
Curated. So she posted that. I remember reading that. And then it was a couple days after that where she came out with, I'm being treated for cancer. So you mean to tell me, girlfriend, that you're in the middle of being treated for cancer when you have young children and you had time to go play on Photoshop?
Why would
Stop
you
with the
want to? And
lies.
that still didn't answer the question of why quite
They did
frankly, the
that, Dani.
dishonesty behind it.
The dishonesty. And this is all my opinion. I feel like they did that to let
I'm
the
not the
people
one, I don't
know.
think she did anything with the photo. I think, again,
No, she
somebody
didn't.
said, we should post this photo of
We
her,
gotta
blah, blah.
post.
Exactly.
Yeah, we
Just
gotta
so
keep
everyone
up with
knows, we're not
appearances.
literally blaming Kate
Kate,
Middleton. This is
no.
larger than that. You have to think
Yeah.
larger than that. Yes.
Kate Middleton is over there trying to get recovered. This is her people. We're talking about something bigger than that.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about Pluto and Aquarius, we're bringing all of this up to help you understand that there's so much more going on than what one might think. And as you said so eloquently earlier, Dani, can we stop shutting down people just because it sounds a bit different than what you're used
Or it's
to? This
scary. Or it
this
makes
world
us
is different
feel
than what you're
icky.
used to. Yeah, like it's 2024. It is not 2000 anymore, friend. This world is different than what you are used to. And we have to get a little savvy because, I mean, going back to the P. Diddy stuff, he's just the fall guy. He did all that shit and more. I'm sure he did. I keep thinking about poor Usher and poor Justin Bieber because who the hell knows? It makes me think of when Justin Bieber was going through his horrifically hard time in his like teens.
I
Like,
know.
oftentimes when children are acting out on that deep of a level, there's something else going on there.
He was, and especially, I'm gonna just say this, and it's gonna make some people feel uncomfortable, but because he is a male and a boy, we ignored that extra hard.
We sure
When
did.
he was being
We
sexualized as a
ignored it extra
child,
hard. Mm-hmm.
we ignored that
Mm-hmm.
way bigger, and that's another Plutonian thing. Like,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
more we've been ignoring something, and that has
Mm-hmm.
ties to our societal inner homophobia. Like that, like,
Homophobia,
yes,
sexuality, loving our bodies,
yes,
like our
yes.
weirdness around sex. I mean, even going back to the show, 90 Day and my infamous bathroom scene, the amount of people that were so fucking uncomfortable with that blew my goddamn mind. It really did, right? When it's like, there's, we are being shown sex and sexuality every day when you turn on the TV. You watch shows like Below Deck and they're fucking in each other's bedrooms and stuff like that. There is sex everywhere. You turn on your Instagram and there's a girl with a bikini that's literally just covering her vagina line. And I think when it comes to sex and sexuality, there is a lot that us as a society need to get with it if we want these horrific things to stop happening. We need to see what is happening if we want it to stop happening, like child sex trafficking. It is happening. It is happening right now. This is a billions of dollar industry. And you all can find this information. I've looked at it. It's uncomfortable when you look at how much money sex trafficking in general, let alone child sex trafficking, is making on a yearly basis, it will have you sick to your stomach.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
in our fucking faces. Again, Balenciaga, Sean P. Diddy Combs,
We've
Epstein.
been
These
there are many of us that have been trying to talk about this for a lot fucking longer than this goddamn current time right
right,
now.
right, right. And it's gonna keep coming up. And so it's like, well, what do you do, right? You guys are probably listening to this and you're like, okay, well, what do we do? In my personal opinion, I think the first thing is to fucking acknowledge that this shit is happening. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the first thing, right? And I'm guilty of it too, where we just go about our days, right? We just, oh my God, that's horrible. And we go about our days. But I think we need to look a bit deeper into what is actually going on than just going about our days.
Oh,
The Nickelodeon
100%.
documentary, how many of us watched it and then just went about our days?
I made a point, so like that rocked my world a bit. Like there was
Yeah, a
just
lot. Drake,
it
all of it.
yeah, the Drake thing was on a personal level. I think I felt it so hard because I like had a crush on him that whole time
You
when
were
he
a
was
Drake
on
and Josh
Amanda Show,
fan.
all the way through Drake and Josh. I have a
Hmm.
sister who's 10 and a half years younger than me. So
Hmm.
Nickelodeon was on, and I was watching Nickelodeon way longer than a lot of my friends were because I had a 7-year old in the house when I was 17 and 18. And
Same, by the way.
yeah, and so that
Yeah.
was when I watched that and having this cognitive dissonance of these strong memories when that was physically happening to him. I'm watching these shows and like loving him and just this innocent, like, this is amazing. He's so amazing.
Hmm.
Ha 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 ha. Like, we are so invested in this joyous way to these television shows. And then to learn that, then to learn, you want to talk about Pluto and why and this shit getting swept under the rug. That man confessed straight up. He got enough people, he manipulated enough people to write a petition. And not only that, you can blame Brian Peck all day for that. How about the judge that said, this is enough, this is enough to make me sentence this person for 16 months?
What the
And he
fuck?
was turned around and employed by Disney after that. And then
What
Disney
the
later
fuck?
comes out and is like, we did fire him again later. I'm like, you also fucking hired him. You also fucking hired
Right.
him
You
knowing he was
also
a
hired
registered
him.
fucking sex offender of children. So,
And not for nothing, this is also getting into racial stuff as well. Like Brian Peck is a white man who, is straight white man passing. It wasn't like, he's this gay guy who was very clearly a gay man. If you were to see his license plate photo, you'd probably think he was cis. And so it just goes to show the discrepancies in our system, right? And
oh,
in
there
our
was a lot of
system.
homophobia there. He got away with that
Exactly.
because of people not wanting to wrap their
Mhm.
brains around a grown man doing this to a young teenage boy.
He was tempted. He was
That
tempted. What
blew,
the fuck?
oh my God, that
That reminded me of
absolutely,
The Gypsy Rose shit when her grandfather
yes.
said that she was touching him at 4 years old.
Oh my God.
And, this also goes into like, we're talking about unhealthy sexual patterns in our community and collective that are getting passed down to generations and generations and generations. And we're also talking about children being over sexualized. And we're also talking about, I want to go back to Drake for a second. As unfortunate and disgusting as it is, this boy repeated the pattern. And we
I
see this
know.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
This boy repeated the fucking pattern. So it's like you feel for him, but you're also disgusted with him because you're like, why the fuck? Like, you have all this money and all these resources to all this therapy, and here you go hurting somebody else who is now damaged goods because of you. When does it stop?
This is why, so you're bringing up such an important point. This right here is so fucking important because what we do is we keep looking at each of these incidents as isolated incidents
Right.
instead of recognizing the blatant fucking
Mm-hmm.
pattern. And if we
Mm-hmm.
could set aside this horrid,
Mm-hmm.
disgusting feeling it makes us feel
Mm-hmm.
inside to learn these things, if we could
Right.
set that aside for 2 seconds,
Right.
we could learn things from people like Drake Bell. It doesn't
Exactly.
mean we can learn, it doesn't mean apologizing for very accountable behavior that needs to be held accountable at
Right.
all. But the more we keep looking at this as like, oh, this was this isolated incident, this one messed up
Yeah.
person, just as the same as the fall guy with Diddy, if
Yeah.
we refuse, this is why astrologers get so mad because we're trained to look
Mm-hmm.
at fucking patterns. Because
Exactly. Oh
that's
my
what
God,
we
I
do.
love
We're
that.
trained to look at
Right.
the fucking
Right.
connections and to hear people over and over again be like, it's so weird that that happened to Britney Spears. It's so weird that that
Right.
happened to Amanda Bynes. Are you,
Right.
Corey Feldman, Drew
Lindsay
Barrymore? We already covered on that
Lohan.
show. Yes.
I mean,
Alicia
it's
Silverstone, the
on and
Olsen twins.
on.
Yes. I
Exactly.
could go on just listing people this has happened to that information is in the public record and it would
Right.
fill up an hour fucking episode just
Right.
listing the name.
But there's no dark agenda. We're just
Thank
all
you.
crazy
Thank you.
conspiracy
Fucking
theorists.
conspiracy theorist, shut up. Yep.
Like, right.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely insane. And I going back to Pluto in Aquarius. First of all, Pluto's gonna be in Aquarius for a hot ass fucking second. A
Mm-hmm.
hot ass second.
We have one
But
last dip back into Capricorn, and we'll see
yes,
what happens with that, by the
we'll
way.
see
And then we'll be
exactly
permanently in Aquarius
in
till the next cycle.
Aquarius.
Yep.
And I do believe, Aquarius is the sign of the individual and the community, right? It kind of is that
Yep.
sign of both. And so it does fall on us to take some ownership here and to make sure that, for example, right, you're teaching your kid about good touches and bad touches, right? For example, you're
Consent.
having the
Yes.
period conversation with your daughter, right?
We're using
Like,
anatomical names for fucking body parts. Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
That you are letting people know that not everybody's your friend, that you're not dropping your kid off with somebody because you want to go to the bar. And again, if you feel triggered, feel triggered. That's the sort of shit that is happening in this world right now. People dropping their kids off. And I am not a parent. I will say that I'm not a parent. But if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, you guys are doing a lot of talking, but what do we do? Here's what we can do. We can make sure that we are protecting the people around us that we love the most, and we're not walking around this world with rose-colored glasses, and we understand
Yes.
that there is a distinct
Yes.
pattern around misogyny, around unhealthy sexual patterns, around racism and homophobia in our collective that is seeping through. And so when you hear spiritual workers talk about new earth, we are not talking about this timeline. We are talking about another one, a more elevated one. So how do we get to that timeline? We start by having some of these very uncomfortable conversations that you and I are having right now that we're going to put public, right? We start by like allowing ourselves to be in these spaces to have these conversations so that you can have these conversations with the people that you love, right? With the children that you love, with your partners that you love, with these sorts of things that are hard and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But poor
This is
Drake,
why the
he
gentle
was, yeah.
parenting and conscious parenting movement, why people need to stop shitting on that. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
disgusting movement I see all the time, people shitting on gentle parenting and conscious parenting, saying that teaching children emotional intelligence and consent and body autonomy, these things are harmful to our society because we refuse to program our children by constantly exercising our physical power over them. You're not allowed to say no because I'm the powerful one above you. What kind of upbringing do you think that fucking creates later on? Because by the way,
It
lots
creates
of
a
us had
P.
to heal from
Diddy.
that shit. Yeah.
It creates a P. Diddy. P. Diddy. The poor Sierra said she had to take drugs, multiple drugs, to even have some of the sexual intercourse that she was being forced to have with male prostitutes. Multiple male prostitutes have come up and said that they were forced to have all sorts of sexual encounters in front of P. Diddy. And one thing that I was thinking about was, we are in the age now where like you can be in a polyamorous relationship. Threesomes are like way more open now than they were back in the day. And I'm like, why wouldn't, if this man was into voyeurism, why wouldn't he just get two willing participants? Because it was about the power for him. It was about the
Yes, and
dominion
he got brought into something that already existed. And
that
then he was
already
given
existed.
power and I
Hmm.
believe he leaned into the role he was given very
I
strongly.
think he
But
leaned into it.
he
Did you see
did
the
not
outburst?
invent the organization. He was quote unquote like a hired
No.
on employee in a lot of ways that worked his
100%.
way up the ladder.
100%.
Like
Did
that's how to look at it.
did you see the
Like
outburst he
painting
had by
it,
chance?
what?
Did you see the outburst he had by chance? That was, and he
Yes.
was like, yeah, like I can do whatever the fuck I want. I own this shit. Whatever the fuck I
Yeah.
want. I'm like, oh my God,
There's
Diddy.
yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah. There was
Oh,
definitely, here's, okay. This is the best analogy I can give for anybody that struggles with like how like or thinks we're like doing any apologizing on Diddy's behalf. The way
we
that
are
I'm
not.
looking at it
Fuck
is
Diddy.
it's like the most disgusting corporation you can think of that just blatantly unethical. The things they do directly harm, if you want to look like big tobacco, for example, and they hire on a guy that is definitely shows signs in their characteristics that they would be pretty down with the way that they operate their business. So they're
Hmm.
like, this is definitely a good fit for us. He's going to live up to a lot of the things we want him to do. And he does, and he works at his way up the ladder, and he's this very higher up. But then some kind of scandal comes out, and he's the one that has to take the fall and the blame for this whole
Hmm.
entire thing that literally existed him before he was even born. If you start digging into this shit goes way farther back.
Way
He was
back.
scouted and he was hired on
One
essentially
hundred percent.
and taken on, and this is why you have to see the patterns in these things,
Hmm.
because if we don't start seeing and recognizing the patterns, we remove it so far from ourselves and we're like, I could never do that. How could somebody else? That must mean this is so foreign and different that I can walk away from it. And yet this is why it keeps continuing and continuing and continuing, because this can happen with the right circumstances. And
Hmm.
because this has been going on and in place for so long, and there's a lot of people with a lot of resources and a lot of money and a lot of time to have the ability to cover these things up, manipulate the
Hmm.
information in a very specific way to all of us, they have decades, if not centuries, of research on human psychology, and they get to test that
Hmm.
on us via our media all the
Yes,
time
they
and how we
do.
respond to things. People know how to deliver information to elicit certain responses. And then you add mob mentality into that, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got a
You
whole
get what you
slew of
want.
people holding up their torches and pitchforks for like a fraction of the huge, way bigger problem
Like
that they refuse to see.
0.001%. I
Yep.
love that you brought up human psychology. Some of you guys might know I'm studying for my personal training cert right now, and I just finished the chapter on human psychology, and it made me think about exactly what you're saying, Dani. And I was like, huh, like all these people, and I was my Sagittarius was Sagittarius thing, and I'm like looking at the sources that they cited, and they're like the sources from like 96 and like 2017. And it just made me go on this like whirlwind of how long human psychology has been studied to elicit certain responses. And so in the study of the PT, sir, essentially it's saying, certain ways humans act and react is going to affect how they view moving their body, long story short. But it's just to kind of piggyback up what you're saying. If I'm learning that in a goddamn textbook on personal training, do we not think the people that run our government know way deeper shit?
Thank
But
you.
like, I
It's not
mean,
that hard to manipulate a person. Let's
no,
be
it's not
honest. That's what
that
Scorpio
hard.
teaches us. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Sorry.
It's crazy. And honestly, guys, I hate to say it, but mark my words, Diddy's going to get time. And then all this is going to be swept under the rug for some time until the next big scandal. And there will be one because we're working with Pluto and Aquarius. And the higher ups are going to be like, there probably won't be. We should be fine now. I think we're good, but there is going to be something else. and it will probably be even bigger. Because if you notice
It's
these
like
scandals,
the leak in the dam in the wall, and
yes,
it starts springing up everywhere. And you thought you could patch up a
uh-huh,
couple holes,
yeah,
but now it's starting to spring out
it's
everywhere
starting to
because
spring
eventually
out.
that wall's about to fucking come down under all that pressure of that water.
Exactly, exactly.
We're the water, by
So
the way, all of
we're
us.
right, right. It's us, it's us. So you guys better start listening to your astrologers, honey. And
I'm with you. This
mhm,
is, if you want to know what to do, fucking educate yourself. If something makes you feel wildly uncomfortable, that doesn't give you permission to dismiss it.
we're not gonna love
Maintain
and
as
light it
open
away.
mind as you can. Exactly. And exactly, I loved what you said. What tools are we gifting to future generations that
Mhm.
stop shit like this in its tracks? Because, by the way, I don't care how disrespectful and this is with all respect to older generations, because I believe in the spiritual sanctity of the elder archetype.
Yeah, yeah,
And when an elder person is like, back in my day, we weren't allowed to say no. Guess what? My kid is allowed to say no, and she's definitely
fuck
allowed to know how
yeah,
much power her yes
fuck
and in her
yeah,
fucking no. Yep.
fuck yeah.
I can take that brunt force from her, and I
Mm-hmm.
am going to take that because that's my fucking job. And she
Right,
is going to go out into this world knowing her no has fucking power.
exactly. Ooh, snaps on that. Your no has fucking power. And I think that people in power have done a really, really, really great job at making us feel that it doesn't. And I'm talking about children, I'm talking about women, I'm talking about people of color, I'm talking about the LGBTQIA community. I'm talking about males. I'm talking about anybody who is not your alpha cis white male with a whole bunch of money in the bank. All of us underneath have been programmed to believe that our no does not have power. And that is where we get horrific fucking situations like Drake, who was making money for his family to live and felt like he was stuck between a rock and a hard place and didn't know what the fuck to do. So he dealt with it. I'm talking about poor Sierra at 19 years old, getting her face bashed in and being made to screw strangers while the person that was claiming to love her watched. We are barely scratching the surface
Oh
here.
yeah. There's a reason why some of the richest people in the world that, well, created their own fortune, the Olsen twins, have repeatedly said,
Mm,
amidst their success, we would never wish our childhood on
they sure
anyone.
did.
You
They
better
sure
not
did.
take that statement lightly, because we sure take it pretty fucking lightly when people, yeah, it would be really hard to be a child star.
And then we move on. Okay, what's for dinner? Where you want to go eat, boo?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep, we see
yeah.
all the money that's thrown at them. And by the way, that is part of the tactic of why we, as the quote, regular folk, that feeds right into their plan. We'll
Right.
just huck a bunch of fucking money at these people so that all of the
Yeah.
rest of the people, no matter what, will be able to look at it and go, well, at least you have that. So no matter what you're going through, your life is better than mine.
Exactly. Exactly. We
Mhm.
somehow make it all okay.
Yep,
It's,
exactly.
it's a group effort to slowly but surely fix the world that we're in, and it may feel overwhelming. I highly suggest we have to start in our little microcosm, right? Some of these changes that we're looking to implement all the way to the higher ups are changes, God willing, that we will see in our lifetimes. We may not. We may see these changes 50, 60, 70, 80 years down the road. Either way, we start in our little microcosms. We start in our little worlds, right? Our home life, our podcast, the people that listen every day, our content online. We stop being quiet and we start having an opinion, and we stop being fearful that somebody's going to call us a crazy conspiracy theorist or a fake witch or astrology isn't real. Like, we stop with all that bullshit and we just stand in our truth. And standing in your truth is more than enough at this point because there's so many like fucked up things going on that like you standing in your truth alone is enough. You don't have to prove anything. Just stand in your authenticity and in your truth. And that is more than enough. So we know this was quite a heavy episode, but Dani and I both felt very called to speak on it as millennials, as
Mm-hmm.
90s kids, and as astrologers.
Yeah.
And Pluto and Aquarius is easily one of the biggest astrological transits we'll see in our lifetime. And we're going to keep talking about it. We have way more astrology after dark coming up. We will actually be covering the Olsen twins. You heard it here first. So stay tuned every month until you know when it comes and share the episode. We are open to thoughts and opinions,
And your
and share this
suggestions. Send
and your
us your
suggestions.
suggestions. What do you want to
Yeah, we've
hear?
gotten some good ones. We've gotten some good ones so far. So we love you. We thank you. We hold space for you. We honor you. You know where to find us. On the gram, Ashley Michelle 90 Day. Dani's That Witch Next Door.
Mm-hmm.
And we will see you in the next one. Ciao,
Bye.
ciao for now.
Hello, friends. I hope you loved today's episode. Make sure you share it with a friend, share it with somebody that you love, and tag me on the gram at Ashley Michelle 90 Day and let me know your thoughts. Leaving that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify is literally what helps this work get to the right people. As you may or may not know, we are in the middle of a spiritual revolution, and us being able to get our hands on resources like this podcast and others is what is literally going to make the world go round. So do me this favor and please leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and share the episode with somebody you love. It really, truly does mean the world to me. I love you so very much, and I will see you in the next one.